how you been doing anyway?
Man, so we have properties
Okay.
and we live on one of our properties and we have tenants. They're driving me fucking crazy.
We're live.
Huh?
We're live.
Oh, but they're driving me crazy.
So are you in DC or are you in
No, I'm in LA.
Okay, but you're originally from DC?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, we're live now. So people, people know your face, they know who you are. So, but let's give us a little bit of background of who Denyce Lawton is and where you're from.
Okay. Oh, I just go?
Yeah, you just go.
Oh, okay. So actually, I'm a military brat. So my father was in the military. We moved around countries, states. So the first half of my life, though, I grew up in the Jersey Shore, like the real Jersey Shore, not the TV Jersey Shore. And so the first half of my life, I grew up there. And then in like 7th grade, like in the middle of the school year, my dad just one day moved us to DC. That was a huge culture shock because the schools that I went to in Jersey, they were, I would say, an equal balance of white people, Black people, and Hispanic people. The minority was actually Asian people. I think we only had like 1 or 2 Asian kids in our school. But there were a lot of also biracial kids in Jersey. So it wasn't out of the norm for somebody to be biracial. I didn't know any other Asian and Black kids other than my brother. So it wasn't like a culture shock for me in Jersey. Whereas when I moved to DC, there was only 1 white kid in our school. And there weren't any Asian kids in our school. I was like the most Asian of kids in our school. And so it was like the first time I had been around that many like Black kids. And it was horrible at first because the way that my brother and I were treated, it was insane. Like I got jumped my first day of school. Yeah. So, I mean, it took some adjusting because, you go into a neighborhood that you're not used to being around. And then you go into a school where you look different and you're told you're not really Black. You're not Black enough. You get teased, you get messed with, and that you talk like a white girl. What does that mean? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that was my introduction to the world. So when I claim DC, I mostly claim DC because although the first half of my life I grew up in Jersey, like where I actually grew up and created my foundation for life, I feel like was in DC because, my parents are still there. My brother's children are still there. But like my womanhood and who I developed as a human being came from the product of being from DC.
Right. So you were there around the time when DC was like the #1 city when it came to crime and violence. You were in the midst of all that?
Yeah, it was like the murder capital at that time.
How did you handle all that? How did you handle,
It was scary. I mean, I remember being in our apartment where we lived, and I think this first or second night of us living there, there was a shooting in our complex. And I just remember my dad making us turn off the lights and staying low. And I was just like, what? And with how our apartment, our particular unit was situated, my bedroom and my brother's bedroom, our windows faced like this wooded area where a lot of the gangbangers and stuff, not gangbangers, because we didn't really have gangs like that, but all the people congregated behind our apartment because that's where the playground was. And so that's where the shootings would take place. And so it was just like, it was terrifying at that point, but then you kind of got used to it. I remember being in 9th grade and my boyfriend at the time got off at my bus stop with me and we walked across the street to the 7-Eleven and there was a drive-by. And I just remember him hovering over me and his little sister and he ended up getting shot.
Wow.
But that was terrifying. And after that, it was just like, okay, you just had to be, careful of your surroundings and you just have to know where to go, where not to go, how to keep your mouth shut, mind your business, you just kind of get used to it, I guess. I don't know. It's like, it wasn't abnormal for me after a while.
Right. And so you're half Black, half Korean. Do you speak Korean? Really? Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah. So you also have a hobby. You do photography.
It turned out, it was a hobby, and it turned out to be like it took a life of its own. So
Okay.
yeah, I actually did some campaigns for like Nike, Herbalife.
Uh-huh.
Um, I did a few campaigns. I shot for like Essence magazine. I've done some photography that's been in People magazine. Excuse me.
So how long you been doing photography? Can you tell us a little bit about what made you get into photography, and you know, and do you want to go from, do you want to direct films? So like, what is it that inspired you to go into photography?
Just the lack of good photographers in LA at the time.
Uh-huh.
When I first moved to LA, there were a lot of scam artists that were just charging people ridiculous amounts of, money.
Uh-huh.
And especially, they know that beginner actors who don't know any better are going to, pay for it. But I also came, oh God, I'm old. I also came into LA when there wasn't digital photography, where it was actual, you had to wait for your negatives and had to look for them and actually have printed, pictures and headshots. But I had a photographer that I loved working with.
Uh-huh.
And he ended up leaving LA. And I had so many friends who had just nightmare stories of having to reshoot with other photographers and spending so much money just to get photos that they liked, that they felt like looked like them. And I understood that. And so one day I just went, I think, let me see, when did I do it? In 2005 or 6, 2006. 2006, I went and just bought a camera. And I started practicing. I started reaching out to my friends and was like, hey, let me shoot. And people were happy. They were like, I finally feel like I look like me. And I think for me, I think it was because being an actor and partially working in, publicity for years, prior, I was able to connect with people where they felt comfortable in front of the camera. I was able to make people comfortable who weren't comfortable. Being a woman, we're very detail oriented. So when it came to like Photoshop or just like, primping and stuff, I was very meticulous about stuff. So people, were happy with their headshots. And I was like, oh, okay. I never correlated that with wanting to direct. I do want to direct eventually.
Right.
But it was never the same. I'm a creative person. And so any forms of being artistic and being in control, I'm gonna, want to venture into a little bit.
Yeah. So like, Mash, what is it that made you get into acting? Like, did you grow up wanting to be an actor, or?
I actually went to medical school.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. For me, being a military brat and moving around a lot, I had to make friends really fast.
Uh-huh.
Like really fast. I had to learn how to, adapt to my surroundings. I think I went to 14 different schools my entire, life. I think about 12 to 14 different schools. And it wasn't until, I wanted to be Whitney Houston. I wanted to be Janet Jackson.
You sing too?
No.
Okay.
I'm not vocally challenged, but I would never try to record an entire album. Sidebar, I was actually signed to a label in a group once through Trackmasters, which is hilarious. So in any case, I was in middle school when we did like a play, and I was just like, this could be fun. And it wasn't until high school where I had to take an alternative English class, and they had drama, and my drama coach was like really amazing. And he kind of like gave me the bug. I ended up doing Shakespeare Theater in DC. And I was like, oh my God, I could be anything. I could be all these different characters, and I could be all these different people, and there was no judgment. And for me, moving around so much, I felt like I had to be a chameleon and had to adapt to my environment and be all these different types of people to fit in really, really fast. And I got exhausted with it. I wanted to be able to be my authentic self and not have judgment, not have people say, oh, she's weird, she looks weird, she XYZ. And for me, I realized in film and television and drama, you could be anything you wanted to be. You could look however you wanted to look. You could play all these crazy characters, and they say, oh, she's acting. That's not who she really is. And it was escapism for me, and it was fun.
Right. And then you eventually you moved to LA, or was it a while? So when you moved to LA, what was your first project that you booked?
The first project I booked, let's see. Oh God. Speaking or non-speaking?
Oh, a speaking role. Because I know you work with Barry. You work with Barry, right? Barry Bowles.
Oh yeah, that was
Yeah.
I did a background job on one of his films.
Oh, okay.
But I knew him through Brian. Why am I screaming? I knew him through Brian Hooks.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, he did a movie called Malibuti, and it
Right.
had oh God, what's her name? Maya Campbell. She was in it, and there was a woman named
Kent,
oh I
was it
can't,
Kent Masters? What's
yes,
yeah,
yes,
and
her.
Brian White was in that. Yeah.
Yeah, Kent Masters. Yeah, so there were some just really amazing women at the time that had did videos that had translated their careers into acting.
Mhm.
And I was new to LA, and I forget how I came about to doing extra work on that movie. Um, but I mean, yeah, it was cool. But as far as my first speaking role was actually the Parkers. I
Okay.
I
Yeah.
did background work on the Parkers for a little while.
Okay.
I know how some people feel about Monique, but my experience with Monique was really dope. Long story short, I was doing background work on the Parkers, and there was a girl that was supposed to play Ken Lawson's character, his character's love interest on the show.
Mhm.
For whatever reason, she didn't show up on that set that day, and they were looking for another girl. And normally with extras who get bumped, you have to have put in time on that set
Uh-huh.
or on that project. And there was a girl named Cherry Johnson. She was
Yeah, we know.
she
Yeah.
played Cherry on Punky
Yeah.
Brewster, Maxine on Family Matters. So Cherry and I were we had met on the Malibu set actually.
Mhm.
And so she happened to be on that episode, and she was just like, "You guys should get the girl that was in the Jaheim video. Like, she's pretty, she's funny, she's nice. Use her, use her." And so Kennel was like, "Yeah, let's get her." And I think Monique made the final decision. And Monique found out that I was from DC, and she was like, "Oh hell yeah, we gonna get her."
Uh-huh.
So they Taft Hartley me. I didn't have enough credits, and so Monica Swan. I don't know if anybody remembers Monica
Yeah.
Swan.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
her. She got me Taft Hartley,
Oh, that
and so
was
I was able
great.
to have a speaking role on that episode. Fast forward, I got what do you call it? I was forced to join SAG, and I had to pay my dues within 30 days. At the time, I didn't have enough money to pay the entire amount. I only paid a portion. I did a payment plan. The next time I went to go pay, I think I had owed like $700-800. I
Mhm.
found out that it was paid, and found out Monique paid it.
See, I love Monique. Yeah,
Good,
yeah.
because yeah.
I love Monique. So when you first booked it, that was your first TV show. Well, like, what was your first film that you booked?
Where I had a speaking role. It was
Yeah.
actually before that. It was before I was even union. It was in
Uh,
1999. I did a movie called Go for Broke with Lisa Ray McCoy
uh-huh.
and Erica Rangor, Praz from Fugees, Michael Gorgon, he was on Party of Five, um, Ed Lauder, Glenn Plummer, Bobby Brown.
No, that's Lamar, John Lamar's film, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So my girlfriend, she was oh, I wasn't supposed to say. Well, I had a friend that was dating him at the time. He was married, but she was dating him at the time.
Uh-huh.
And she was working on the film. And so she was like, "Yeah, when you come to LA, come do this movie." And I got gypped on that film. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was supposed to be the lead in the film, and then there was another girl they ended up giving the lead to because she was Praz's cousin or Wyclef's cousin or something like that. So they gave the lead to her. And they were like, "Oh, it's okay. We'll give you this other role that's equivalent." It was not equivalent. And I was supposed to get my SAG card from that film, and I was never given it. I haven't seen a penny from that film.
Wow.
Yeah. And they ended up not even giving me actual credit. Like, I have 0 credits in, like, my name's not in the credits, and I
Uh-huh.
had like a huge speaking part in a speaking role in the film. So
And then, like,
yeah.
after that, then how long did it take you to book your first leading role? As a leading lady?
It took a while. Like, I mean, even with acting, although I did the Parkers, that was kind of like my first speaking role. It wasn't like my first audition and then book. My first audition and book with TV was a show called Half and Half.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was the first time I actually booked something from auditioning. Leading, I have to look at my resume, look at what I worked on next.
Mm-hmm.
um, Film or television?
Film.
Film. I don't know. Damn.
Because I looked at your IMDb. I know you did a movie with Brad James. You were the lead in that, right?
Oh yeah, that was maybe we shot that 2 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. But I'm
yeah.
sure you were lead way before then. So let's get into it, because
Yes.
once you book a role, right, and once you book a screenplay, how do you bring that screenplay to life? What are your process?
If you're able to have a process, because sometimes you'll book a film, especially if it's independent, and unfortunately, if it's an urban independent, you're not given a lot of time to actually develop a character. I did a film called Fanatic on BET. I wasn't even sent the full script until the day before we were supposed to film.
Really?
And that character was like a Kathy Bates character from Misery, and that took a lot of research and development and talking with the director and the producers to see what they wanted. And I didn't get any of that. I had to figure it out every day on the set. So that's unfortunate. Sometimes you have those situations where there is no time and you just got to go with the flow and figure it out. But normally, I will research. Like for House of Pain, for instance, that character that was originally created, it wasn't a character that I really identified with, and I really didn't know how to connect to her. But the great thing was that Tyler Perry gave us the creative freedom to develop our characters on our own. And the two people that I meshed together for that role was Jackie Harry's character from 227, because she was boy crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kimora Lee Simmons, because, she was just like this fabulous woman that, could put people in their place. And so I would watch. Kimora had a reality show, and I remember researching and watching her reality show and watched how she moved. Mm-hmm. And then I watched a lot of 227 to see how like Jackie handled men.
I can see that. Yeah.
And so that's how I, created Dana. With film, if you're given enough time, I do as much research as I can if the character isn't a real life character. But for me, a lot of the roles that I've played have been real life people. Hasn't been anything misery-ish. It's just been a woman whose heart has been broken, or a woman who's in love, or a woman who's been betrayed, and I think as a woman and a Black woman, we've already been through those experiences. Mm-hmm. And so I just tap into real life experiences for myself, or talk to people who have experienced it.
Right. So like once you decide on, it's like once you decide on like the care that you're going to take, right? Mm-hmm. Is there like a particular, outside of like the Misery, outside of Fanatic, because you did comedy on House of Pain. Mm-hmm. So like
physical comedy,
right? So how did you go about booking that role for House of Pain?
Monica Swan. So long story short, they were actually auditioning that role. They were looking for Hispanic or Asian women, and Monica Swan called me directly. So I actually there was an agency I was working with that tried to get me in for it. And I ended up dropping that agency that day. So I didn't even get to go in for that audition through them. But then the next day, Monica Swan called me and was just like, listen, they're asking me for something different. You're something different. Come on in. So when I went in, there were no other Black women. There were no other, there were only Asian and Hispanic women. Mm-hmm. And when I went in, it was all improv. There were no sides. There was nothing to memorize or audition with. It was all improv. And she just kept throwing a whole bunch of things at me. What's crazy is Monica Swan wasn't even the casting director for it. She happened to step in that one day, and I think that was her last casting job. And I auditioned, put myself on tape. Maybe about 2 weeks later, I got called that I booked it. Right. I got a call on Halloween, was like, you booked it. And I was like, what? And it was only supposed to be one episode.
But you played the barber though, right?
No, I played a nail technician in the barbershop.
In the bar, okay, nail tech, okay.
Yeah. And it was only supposed to be one episode. Flew to Atlanta. We shot the episode. Myself and the other three actors that were in the barbershop, we got along so well. Like the first day of working, it felt like we all knew each other like forever. And we had we had a lot of fun. And immediately, Tyler was just like, make it your own. So after we did the table read and rehearsal during our lunch, the four of us came together and we rewrote our entire scenes. We
He
rewrote the
allowed you
entire
all to do
script.
that?
Huh?
Tyler Perry allowed you all to rewrite your scenes?
He didn't care as long as it was funny. And
That's
at the time,
that's
we also
amazing.
were going through the writer's strike. When I booked it, there was a writer's strike, and he had let go of all his original writers and
Yeah.
had brought in new writers. And so they didn't know who the characters were. They didn't know how to develop the characters that well, I guess. And so he trusted us. He saw what we did. He loved it. And by the third episode, it went from one episode to recurring. And by the third episode, he offered us a series regular contract.
Right. And then once you received the series regular, right, were you still writing the your character?
There was not one episode that the four of us did not write our stuff.
Oh shit, that's
We
nice.
never got writer credit. Like there was, like they gave us the base of what the story, like for instance, if the storyline was Palmer, who was the barbershop owner, if he lost the barbershop in a card game, and the new owner was going to be crazy and he was going to come in and change everyone's wardrobe and do crazy stuff, that storyline would remain, but our dialogue always changed. So the four of us would always go in and sit down and write together. And then they eventually incorporated Lance's character into the barbershop. And Lance was, he was the lead on the show. He was, he was the main set. We were the swing set. But Lance, he would sit down with us and he'd be like, all right, what we doing today? And so then it became the five of us and we would just sit and write and just figure out like, are you okay with this? And hey, we should do this and we should do that. And we would figure out our own physical stuff. And that's how we ended up making that work.
That should be nice. So like, did you have to get it approved? Like once you had something written, right? Did you have to get Tyler Perry to approve it, or you just give it to him? He said, okay, we're going to shoot it.
We never wrote anything down. We just did it. We would write stuff down in our, why am I screaming? We would write stuff down in our scripts. And then, so this is how our days would start. Our table reads started at 9 a.m. And we would go through 3 episodes. We shot 3 episodes a day.
Yeah.
So we would start our table reads at 9 a.m. And that would go for maybe about an hour, maybe 2 hours at max. And then we would go through blocking rehearsal. Then we will break for lunch, get ready, and then we would come back and shoot the episodes back to back. By the time we got to filming, we had already figured out what we were going to do. Sometimes we would actually get our scripts in advance. And we would already work those things out. And when we would do it at the table read, he just let us, I'm going to be honest, I don't even think Tyler knew what was originally written and what we did. Because he would be at the table reads, but he would just focus on our performances. And there were times where he would just be so frustrated with the writer's writing.
Yeah.
There was like a whole storyline with Demetri McKinney's character. And I just remember him slamming the script and was just so frustrated. He was like, let me get this straight. So my Black mother on my show was a crackhead who, did XYZ, who was a drug addict. And then she burned the house down. Now she's a hoe and she don't know who her baby's father is. He said, this is where we're taking our character. So
he didn't know, have no idea where the show was going?
I think that's why he's taking creative control over all his scripts now.
I see now, yeah.
Which I don't think is the greatest ideas. I think that he should incorporate some writers and work with them. Because then you make it seem like writers aren't essential. And you also make it seem like Black writers aren't essential. Women aren't essential to their own storylines. Gay writers aren't essential to their storyline. Black men aren't essential to their storyline. And I think that it shouldn't just be, a one-track mind on what you think the world should be. And, you kind of understand what I'm saying? Because all shows operate off of a showrunner and a team of amazing writers. And I think that he should have writers. But anyways, with this particular show, he didn't like a lot of what was happening. He got frustrated, but he let stuff fly, because that character still didn't know who her baby's father was. There were times where he would rewrite stuff. He would just be like, we're not doing this episode. I remember we came to work one time and we didn't shoot anything. I was in Atlanta for a week and he scrapped all the scripts that week.
Oh, wow.
And then they flew us back to LA. I was like, okay, we're not filming this week. I just got my travel pay, which was nice. At that time, travel pay was whatever you made on the episode. So I was like, okay. And then I remember going home on a Friday night and Sunday morning, getting an email that I had a flight that afternoon. And they were like, all right, come back now.
Okay, and did he like that's at that point? Let me ask you this. So once you start shooting, like you were shooting 3 episodes per day, how
Hmm.
did that sharpen as an actress, right? Did that
Hmm.
sharpen your skills as an actress, or it was how did that? No.
I don't feel like it did. I felt like it was boot camp, but it wasn't a good boot camp. Like there was no time to develop anybody. I mean, unless we got our scripts in advance and we were able to communicate, the four of us would communicate. Stop, Alexa, stop. Um, Whenever we would be able to communicate with each other, then we would, have it rolling. What ended up happening was Tyler then started Meet the Browns and another one of his other shows. So he was all over the place. Like he was from one stage to the next. And so he started allowing other people to come in and delegate. And so I remember I was told to take Tasha Smith's acting class because I didn't understand comedic timing. And I was like, how have I been on these many episodes, but now I don't understand comedic timing? What the problem was, and we weren't allowed to talk back.
Uh-huh.
And the problem was we would do the table read, we would do the blocking rehearsal, and then he would leave and go work on Meet the Browns. And then there would be 2 or 3 other people telling us what to do. And there would be completely different directions that would, be, conflicting. And so when it came to filming, he was like, didn't I tell you to stand over there and then do that? I'm like, yeah, but Roger Bob said this and Mark said this. And he was like, you don't listen to them, you listen to me. And I'm like, what the fuck? You left them with us to. So there were those issues that I don't think are standard in film and television. I've never, I've done Castle, I've done Chicago PD, I did Entourage. I've worked on other television shows where that's not how it worked. So it was a boot camp and having to learn how to improv very fast, change wardrobe fast, jump into hair and makeup and jump into a different scene fast. But that's no different than being in theater. And I think that's probably why he operated that way. His experience was theater.
Right.
I don't feel like I picked up too many other skills other than learning how to write.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you too. Is that as far as a writer, because at that point you may not even know that you knew how to write until you just had to write. Is that like right to say, or?
Yeah, I think for me, I've been writing since college, so I was already like in like the writing phase of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was kind of easy, but I wasn't good with comedy. I'm like, I'm not a comedian.
Mm-hmm. I
mean, I could be funny, with my friends and stuff, but that was the hard part. But I don't think that I would have been able to execute what I was able to execute for my character and on my end if I didn't have those other 3 actors.
Yeah.
And how I realized that was one of our actors, Jason Dearden, who is now doing his thing. It might have been a blessing for him that he wasn't able to come back on House of Pain. Mm-hmm. But he, I don't want to say he was replaced, but Gary Owen came in. And Gary Owen being a stand-up comedian, a lot of comedians who aren't actors, they don't know how to share the spotlight. They're used to having the punchline by themselves. They're used to, controlling the storyline. And Gary would come in and we were like, we're going to do this. He's like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do my own thing.
Really?
Like, yeah, there was, and Gary knows this. In the beginning, none of us liked Gary. We didn't fuck with Gary. I love Gary now. You can't say anything bad about Gary Owen to me. But in the beginning, it was so hard to work with Gary because he wouldn't collaborate writing with us. He wouldn't sit down and work with us. And he would say stuff and we're like, dude, that's racist. You can't say that. And he's like, that's not racist. It's funny. Okay, white boy, that's racist as fuck. You can't say that. Like, I don't care how black your wife is. That's racist. You can't say it. And he would say it. And he would think it would get a big laugh and it wouldn't get a laugh. But Tyler let him get away with it. But if it wasn't for Jason Dearden, Bobby Baker, and Palmer Williams Jr., I don't think I think collectively we were able to work together. I don't think separately we would have been able to create the barbershop.
Yeah. So, like, let me ask you, what has been your most challenging role as an actress?
Challenging character-wise or production-wise?
Character-wise. We already know what type of production can go.
When you're dealing with a director who's never directed before and is married to their narcissism, yeah, that can be hard. Fanatic, because I didn't have time to develop that character. As a woman, naturally we have, as men would like to say, psycho tendencies, I guess, retaliatory, behaviors and emotions. But I mean, that was an intense character who was just mentally unstable and who went through a lot of trauma. Like that character was raped as a teenager. I wasn't raped as a teenager. This character gave birth to a did she give birth? I can't remember. I don't know if she gave birth to a child or if the child died. This is a woman who, kidnapped and stalked someone and tortured someone, murdered people. Like, I've never murdered anybody.
This is on Netflix, right?
It's on Netflix now, yeah.
Oh, we gotta go check that out.
Yeah, it's called Fanatic. It was with Hosea Chanchez, Darius McCrary, Michelle Mitchner, Sticky Fingers. There's a handful of people. I can't remember everybody in it. Oh, Shawn Merriman, he was in it. So yeah.
And that's directed by the brother. He's a DP as well, right? Okay.
He was. Let me tell you something. Keith was amazing.
Keith is
amazing. He DP'd for people like James Cameron and Oliver Stone and stuff like that. He's amazing. What happens is when the executive producer decides to throw the film away and say, "Hey, you're going to be directing it," but this guy's never directed, he wouldn't say cut. Keith would forget to say cut. He would forget to give us direction. He would forget to delegate things. And Jose and I would just sit on set sometimes. I'm gonna say that was one of the most challenging sets I've ever been on. It was very difficult to work on that. Jose and I we had this thing where whenever something crazy happened, which was like 5 times a day, and it was just distracting or frustrating, he and I would just look at each other and be like, oranges. Fucking oranges, man. Like, let's go get some oranges. You want to go get an orange? Let's go get an orange. Sure. Jose and I meditated. Anytime that he and I worked together on a set, whenever he was on set, we would meditate together. If I wasn't crying. But I mean, the Keith was amazing. He was a sweetheart. He had an identical twin brother that was also on the set. The crew was really nice. They just didn't know what they were doing, and which was really unfortunate. We had a first AD who was really cool, really nice. But there were times where he was overworked, where our first AD was falling asleep during a scene. And it was like, nigga, what? Wake up. We would just hear him snoring in the middle of the scene. And we're like, what is happening? Our props people and our set decorator, they were just not on point sometimes. No particular person, but they were kind of all over the place sometimes. And Jose and I would be sitting there for like an hour ready to do our scene, and we're not equipped. And so it would take us out of our characters. And for someone like me who had to cry during scenes or do insane stuff, when we're sitting there for an hour waiting for the rest of production to get their shit together, it takes us out of our whole situation. When you have a director who doesn't know when to say cut or delegate transitions, it makes it hard because he's never directed before. He forgets, I have to actually direct my actors. We had a script supervisor who was so picky and so anal. Like, you want them to be good, but he would interrupt shit. He would interrupt a scene.
A script supervisor? Like, what?
Huh?
A script supervisor?
Yes. And he would interrupt a scene and be like, oh, her hair was on the right side. My nigga, you're looking at a mirrored version of it. That's not what it was. What are you talking about? But he would interrupt like a whole physical scene. And it was just like, as an actor, like between me, Michelle, and Hosea, we had a lot of physical and emotional things to do. And there was just always something going on. It was just hard for us to actually, stay in our characters or develop it properly. And that was challenging.
Yeah, so let me ask you, so for up-and-coming actors who are faced with that type of, because they're going to be faced more than likely with a situation like that, like, what advice would you give them?
Oh God. I mean, I worked on a film production before where I was like, if this was my first experience, I probably would never act again. So I've been in a situation already experiencing what good productions are like. For anybody that's never worked on something before, if your first time or your first experience is a bad one, that's not the norm. I'm gonna be honest, it's not the norm. Unfortunately, I will say this, it is the norm on an independent film with predominantly African American independent
I
films.
hear that a lot.
It's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
The narrative needs to be changed. It has to be changed, man. It's so upsetting. But it happens on independent films, period. I mean, I've done an independent film where it was ran by an entire white production, and it was the first AD and the executive producer were screaming at each other and cursing each other out, and it went to blows. So it happens on every, independent, not every, but majority of independent projects. Don't give up. Don't let that narrative dictate your passion, your desire, your hard work. Because there are a lot of great experiences. I mean, I've had better experiences as a background actor than I have had as a leading, lady. There are a lot of great experiences. I would say make the focus in being a better actor. Make the focus for the drive to be, I want to work with dope people. I'm eventually going to be able to work with dope people that's going to make me dope or better. I feel like if that's your vision, then the other stuff can't derail you, because that's my vision. My vision is to work, whether it's one independent film or one TV show or one film at a time. I've been able to work with people like Lynn Whitfield and, Glenn Plummer and, even indirectly, the George Clooney's and stuff. And so every project will bring you to that goal. And unfortunately, in between, there's going to be some really up ones.
Yeah. So let me ask you, what makes a good scene partner?
Someone who listens, someone who communicates, someone who is open to trying something different, someone who is respectful and professional, and someone who wants to be dope too.
Y'all hear that? You have a ton of me. You might answer any of these questions that you have.
And what? Say what you say?
You might answer any questions that you have. There's questions on the.
Oh no. Yeah, that's fine. I was like, what?
Okay. Okay. Someone says, Coalition. I love her in Coalition.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you.
I love that. It's some. Okay.
I actually, not a fun fact, because it's not a fun fact. I actually shot that film 2 months after my brother was murdered, and that was my escapism from dealing with reality. And that was the film that if that was the first project I ever worked on, I wouldn't have acted again.
Oh wow! So that was shot in LA or DC?
No, we shot that in Arizona.
Oh, Arizona.
For several months. It was insane.
Okay. Let me ask you, like, if you had to play a real life character, who would it be?
What do you mean, like
if it were like a Rosa Parks or?
Oh. So I've been working on a project for the last 10 years on Bessie Coleman.
Really?
Yeah, I've been doing research. I've met her nephew. I've done like a lot of historical research. Even when I went to Chicago to do Chicago PD, I took that opportunity to like visit all the places in Chicago, even her burial site, where the Chicago Defender was printed.
Around my area.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
I found out coincidentally, Bessie Coleman Day in Chicago is my birthday, May 2nd. So I was like, oh,
you're Taurus.
Yeah.
Yeah, 16.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But as like another person, I would love to play Jody Watley.
I could. Oh, she's from Chicago too.
Yeah. I love her. She follows me on Instagram. I don't get starstruck or anything, but I don't think people know about Jody Watley and how much of an icon she really is. Like, if people just knew what her story was like. Okay, do you remember the I Want to Dance with Everybody video that how Whitney was dressed in that whole look and everything? People say inspired. It was stolen from Jody Watley because she was the first person. She was like a fashion icon. I don't know if people know, but Jody Watley was considered a fashion icon because she established the biker shorts with those tutus. She was the first person to do that. And then all of a sudden, like other people started doing that, the way that she, you know, she dressed and the way that she did her hair. But she was like, I think that she was like awarded this thing from like Vogue magazine for like being a fashion icon and an entrepreneur. And she was the first person to have her own workout DVD that went platinum.
Really?
And she was the first workout video that incorporated music.
So are you trying? You say you're trying to put a story together, or have you?
I would love to.
Have you reached out to her?
Yeah, she and I've talked about it.
That would be great.
Yeah, there's so much about her, from her situation with, you know, Soul Train to being put together in the group Shalimar, because people thought it was just a group that happened to appear on Soul Train, and it wasn't. They were Soul Train dancers that Don Cornelius said, I want a group. I want to put a group together, because he started hating the bands that were coming to, not hating, but he started disliking like some of the acts started coming to his show, and he was like, I'm gonna put a band together. So he created this band from his Soul Train dancers, and she was one of them, and that's how Shalimar came about.
I had no idea. So, what took your interest in wanting to do the Bessie Coleman story? What is it about her that you like to bring her story to life, though?
So it wasn't even about her; it was about me. One night, I was watching the Lucille Ball movie, Lucy. And I just thought those actors like Danny Pena, they were so amazing. And I remember talking to Wesley Jonathan. So, you know, Wesley and I were in a relationship for a really long time. But even post relationship, we stayed best friends. And we were talking like breakout roles. Like, what do we need to do to like be a breakout actor? And we were like, oh, we got to do one of these type of films. And so I was online all night with him, and we were researching who we could play. So I looked up, you know, historical Black women that haven't been, you know, whose story hasn't been told.
Right.
And he saw a picture of Bessie Coleman, and he was like, you could play Bessie Coleman. I was like, you think so? He was like, yeah. And then so I started researching her and just found out so much stuff about her that nobody knows. Like, we have all these books about Fly Bessie Fly and how she was the first, you know, Black aviator, but there's so much more about Bessie Coleman that we don't know. Like, she walked 4 miles each direction, so 8 miles altogether every day just to go to school.
And this is in Chicago?
Yeah. Well, no, she didn't start off in Chicago. I forgot, was it Alabama, where she was a little girl. So when she was a little girl, and then they couldn't go to school anymore, but she was really good with math, and so, you know, she helped her family. Her father left them. It was just like a whole jacked up story. But every time I read more and more about her in the chronological order of her from being 6 years old all the way up until the day she died, every time she went to pursue something that she wanted to do, it started off as 2 miles she walked every day, to 4 to 10. When by the time she went to France to do her aviation school, because they didn't let Black people take aviation school out here, aviator school, she was walking 10 miles a day just to get to school. You got people that won't even walk down the street. You know what I mean? The racism that she faced, people thought, oh, well, she was able to, you know, get her pilot's license. She had to take boats across the country just to get to a place where she wasn't even allowed to live near the school, and would have to live far away just to go to, you know, to get her aviation license. But she wasn't only the first Black person. She was the first American to have an international pilot's license. They don't tell us that. They always focus on Amelia Earhart. She was the first woman. She was the first Black woman. She was the first Black person, and she was the first American to have her international pilot's license. And she was murdered. People say that it was an accident. It wasn't an accident. She was actually murdered.
How was she murdered?
So, long story short, she died during a plane. She died in a plane crash, and they said it was an accident while she was doing testing with her plane. It was literally, she was testing her plane and doing tricks the day before she was about to have an air show that was going to raise money for her aviation school in America for Black people.
Oh, wow.
And when they did the investigation, they found a wrench in the engine. And they claimed that the mechanic that was on board with her must have left that wrench in there. And from some other people that I ended up speaking to, including her nephew, who was actually there when her plane crashed. I think he's the only surviving member or surviving person that was still alive at the time. He was like, the mechanic never even worked on the plane that day. They were doing the testing to see, because they had worked on it a couple of days before, and he was like, all his tools were in his toolbox. It wasn't his tools. Like, somebody else must have done that, because they had been protesting her opening her school for Black people. They didn't want Black people to have their aviation license, pilot's license. They didn't want Black people to even learn, or they didn't want her to have her school. So one of her potential students, he ended up, my memory is shot right now. I remember he actually took the drive and all the information that she taught him in between this time and when she mentored him, and he started the Tuskegee Airmen School.
Oh, wow.
So the Tuskegee Airmen School was inspired by her. And I think I want to say originally it was called the Bessie Coleman Air School.
Yeah, most of us didn't even know that at all.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like there's so much that has happened that happened with this woman, and so many people that she inspired, and so many things that happened because of her that we don't know. And we already know there's a lot of things about Black people that we don't know, that they don't teach us. I just was telling my friend Godfrey, they were talking about comic books and Marvel and how Black people, aren't interested in comics. And I was like, that's not true. Because people don't know who Octavia Butler. Do you know who Octavia Butler is?
I knew who she was based off what when you were talking to Godfrey. And you
saw it. Okay.
She's into sci. She does sci-fi, right?
Well, she was the first, African American sci-fi writer.
Yeah.
And she was the first African American woman that was able to participate in all of these programs back in the day. And so, she has books that she's written that has been turned into comics that will eventually, hopefully, be put on film. But she wrote her first sci-fi book before Stan Lee ever wrote his first character.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. I think this is a very interesting question, right? So as because you mix between Korean and Black, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when these historical Black characters come out, like say for instance the Rosa Parks and so forth and so on, are you ever asked to audition for these roles because the fact that you're biracial?
That never actually comes into play.
No, okay.
My ethnic background never comes into play.
Okay.
If anything, I'm only told by, that's not true, but I'm mostly told by our people that I'm not Black enough. Yeah. And it was like, huh? But then you went and put a Hispanic girl in the movie. Stop. You know what I mean? But there's only been a small handful of times, but they were mostly commercials where I was told I wasn't Black enough. And it was because, and then the person they would cast would be like a dark-skinned sister who didn't have natural curly hair, but then they would make her have like a naturally curly weave. And they would take a dark-skinned sister and they would try to make her look white aesthetically. Does that make sense? Like they would like put her in like long silky hair, or they would put her in like, spiral curly, weaves. And they would try to take her Blackness from her. So if she came in with like a natural hair, with her naturally curly hair, they would be like, oh, let's put a weave on you. And then you would see these commercials where you see all these sisters with the same curly weave. And it's like, let her wear her natural hair. If her hair is naturally curly, let it be naturally curly. Why are you trying to make it curlier or straighter? And those would be the roles I would go in. They're like, yeah, we want someone a little bit more ethnic. And then they would have her put on some type of head wrap. They would make her the Popeyes lady, basically.
Right.
And it was like, oh, you want her to coon. You want somebody that's going to come on TV and coon. Okay, gotcha.
Hey, Denyce, there are a lot of comments. I'm going to send you the link to this, right? Because there are a lot of comments. But we have to wrap up. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, okay. I get so many comments, and people been texting me. Someone just texted me, Sarah, this is a great interview and inspiring me to get out even more. Hey. I definitely need you. You're inspiring a lot of people with this interview.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I'd love
to do this again with you. I've never done this before. This is interesting. Can this connect to like it just only connects to Facebook like this?
Right. It connects to Facebook and also YouTube.
And YouTube. You can put multiple people on here?
Yes, you can. You can put up to 6 people.
Shut up. Yeah. This is interesting.
Yeah, so you can come on, it connects to your Facebook, and you can put up to like 6 people on here.
But it doesn't connect to Instagram, right?
No, it doesn't connect. That's the only thing. I wish.
Yeah, Instagram knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
It'll eventually do it, but they'll charge people a fee.
Yeah. So let me ask you, so, before you leave, because you do a show on your Instagram with Godfrey, who's a Chicagoan. So you know, again, to talk about that a little bit.
Well, he just goes on live, and I just jump on with him. It's his show.
Because I always see you on it, and I stop in and I listen to it, and it's great. I think the two of you are great together. But you know, in terms of the Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you have coming up next?
Well, right now, nothing, because everything is kind of paused, which is unfortunate. Like literally, oh God, it was like a week before the lockdown happened. I had just booked an anthology series for Amazon. It was a 6-part series that's going to be really good. So once we get out of this lockdown, I'll be going to Atlanta to film that. I booked a recurring on a CW show. So hopefully we'll be able to come back and do that. And it's recurring at some point, series regular. So hopefully we'll be able to come back and do that as well. And another show I got a recurring on. I'm not sure when they're going to be coming back because it's for their new season. But whenever we come back out of this, I'll be, doing all that. As of right now, I've been pitching. I have about 40 completed film scripts,
Really?
but I'm focusing on 3.
Okay, you wrote all 40 of them?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great. That's
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I have some TV shows that I've written, some that are non-scripted, some that are scripted. But it's right now it's pitching season. Like I said, I have a tenant that actually works at Netflix, so I have a few tenants that work in different places, and so it's like, okay, it's time to start pitching and start, creating and building. And what I will say for any aspiring actors or actors right now, use your social media platform right now. Get yourself out there. Start creating content. Start putting stuff out there. Use your social media as your vision board.
Yeah, that's true.
Start connecting with people, talking with people.
Yeah. So I want to thank you, Denyce. We have to do this again.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna reach out to you soon, so we definitely have to do this again. Once this is all over with, and once you start, everything gets back up and going, let's definitely come back and keep the people informed. Thank you, Denyce. I truly appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, take care.
Okay, bye.